It's so nice to see you all. My goodness, I've been looking forward to this. I, uh, I was really calm and cool about this weekend, and about sort of this historic moment with this being the last session of the school. Uh, and then I looked at the registration list yesterday, and all of a sudden I just welled up inside as I saw all the people that were coming, and so many of you. And I just really was overcome with what an incredible group you all are, from all parts of the world. And what really struck me is how you're all messengers. I know some are practitioners and mentors and therapists and teachers and, a variety of professions, but the simplicity of just simply being a messenger, no other title, but sharing wisdom, sharing what you've learned, sharing the difference it's made in your life. I will never forget this story. I was doing a webinar for a group in one of the Scandinavian countries, and one of the participants was a woman who sold flowers outside a garage, a gas station. And she said, halfway through the webinar, Elsie, I love these principles. They've helped me so much in my life, but I'm not a practitioner, so I don't feel I'm really sharing. And yet, she said, I love my work. And when people come in to buy flowers, we always have a chat. And often it turns out to be about life. And she said, it's just lovely. But, I'm not really doing anything with these principles, with this understanding. And I loved that. And I said to her, you're doing the best of anything. You don't have to have a title to share. You just share. And I think that was one of the things that I personally got from Sid when I finally started to listen and to feel the truth of what he was sharing with us. I felt the truth of what he was sharing with us from day one. It scared me. That's what truth does sometimes. It shakes you up, and it shook me up. But I knew that there was something. I didn't know what that something was, but I could see the change in him. I could feel the change in Sid. And he was a working man at that moment. And so this flower lady outside a gas station, it's like, how much more perfect can you get to be able to share and to enjoy your life and to share beauty with others, both in flowers and in a connection, a conversation with people. And so I said that to her, that you're just a beautiful soul sharing your flowers and sharing your wisdom. I mean, you just couldn't ask for anything more. And I was a housewife. And Chip and Jan also, had a down-to-earth lifestyle. None of us were coaches or therapists or anything like that. And when Sid told us, actually the four of us, that if we heard, how Sid would say, you can hear or you can hear. And he said to us, if you hear what I'm saying, you will travel the world and you will share this with others. And he had said that the very first day when he came to share with us what he had uncovered, he and Barb. And he said that he would travel the world. He and Barb would travel the world. And I thought, oh my word, Sid, poor soul. Poor soul. How can you, what's happened to you that you can say such bold things, such arrogance coming from this welder, but yet what had happened to him, like the visibility of the transformation in him. My intellect is in disbelief, and yet my soul is recognizing that something extraordinary had happened to this man. And so here we are from all different parts of the world, sharing however we share, whatever is meaningful to us. And whether we share by words or whether we share by a feeling, it's a precious gift. And as my journey continues, almost 50 years, for Sid's enlightenment was in 1973. So next year it'll be 50 years. And so even though I was around before he had his profound experience, I didn't really hear him. But I also, once I did get a glimmer, have been sharing for almost 50 years. And my sharing is going through a different phase now. And I love this for all of us. Like the school moving into this last session here this weekend reminds me a little bit of when Sid sent us on our way from the island. I don't know if you talked about that at all yesterday, but it reminds me of that, that we were all taken aback when he was encouraging us separately and as a group, those of us that were here in those early days, like, okay, enough now, go away. We want to have a quieter life, especially Barb, because they had people coming down their driveway and dropping in at all hours and dancing on their lawns. And it was like they had very little life there towards the end of that time, maybe 4.5 years after he'd had his experience. And so he was saying, okay, enough already. Stop depending on me. Share what you've learned. When you share what you've learned, you'll learn more. But it's time for you to leave. And again, most of us were like, no, we want to stay here with Papa. Papa Banks wanted to stay there. And he was pretty adamant in a gentle way. But those of you who knew Sid know that he could be direct and gentle, and he could be direct and just, you mind what I'm saying now. And so, yeah, it was time for us to leave. And I had been thinking, okay, well, this is it then. We won't see him and Barb anymore. And we ended up moving to a suburb of Vancouver. And it wasn't at all like what I thought it was going to be. We did find more independence because Sid wasn't there always to count on, And we were also feeling the pull of our soul. Like, live what you know. Live in your understanding. Don't just talk about it at an intellectual level, which I did in those days a lot of the time. But then I'd slip into a feeling of soul, of what this really means, of this spiritual energy that we're all made of. I just slip into that kind of without knowing until you're in the feeling, and then And so then we began to find our way, and we began to reach out to community colleges, universities, hospitals. I did all kinds of things that I'd never even dreamed of doing before, not having a professional background as a counselor, but knowing from what Sid had taught us that this understanding was the new psychology, was the new philosophy, was the new psychiatry. It was a new paradigm in the field of mental health? Well, on one hand, I felt the truth of what he was saying, not because I understood it, because I didn't know anything about the field of mental health, but because I just simply felt it. And I feel that that's so much of our journey that we're not attentive to. You know, we want answers. We want concrete answers. We want to know how. We want to know why. We don't always trust the feeling. And Sid would tell us in the early days and throughout his teaching, listen for a feeling. I would ponder that. And sometimes my head, in the pondering of what he was saying, my head would grow so big that I felt sometimes it would explode. You know, there was just so much I was trying to figure out. And then he'd look at us as if we were visiting with him as an individual, and he'd say, just don't try to figure it out. Just enjoy the feeling. And his presence in the feeling was so deep and so strong that oftentimes that I would slip in to the depth of his feeling. And so I would attribute it to him. This feeling happens when I'm with Sid. And he would tell us, he would tell me as an individual, he would tell Kit, he would tell the people that came to, it's not me, it's you. Always, it's you. If you get a feeling, it's your feeling. Honor that feeling. Respect that feeling. And so slowly I began to hear that. And I began to honor the feeling, even when I didn't understand the whys of that feeling. And down the road, sometimes I would know why, I would find out why, it would kind of reveal itself to me. And other times it wouldn't. But the more I honored the feeling, full stop, the more I lived in the feeling without having to understand why. And this to me, again, is why the school, it feels so right. Because many of us are starting to live more in silence and know that even when we're living in silence, we're still contributing to humanity. We're still contributing to global mental health. It's that famous phrase of Sid's, doing without doing. I'm getting a stronger sense of that living in the feeling and simply being in your home, loving life, loving humanity, that the energy of that moves into the world. You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to say, okay, energy, go out into the world. It's not like that. It's this simple spiritual process that happens, that you just slip into, and you begin to see, I'm doing without doing. And sometimes the quiet life can come to you because of a life challenge. That's been happening to me over the last 3 years or so. I was living in so much doing, like literally doing and traveling and so on, that my body started to react to all that doing. And finally, I began to be attentive to what my body was telling me, because I was feeling my body was separate to this spiritual essence. I wasn't seeing that my body is the form of this essence. And then as I began to get a glimmer of that and start to adjust to that, to honor my body as much as I honored the spiritual essence of soul, things started to change again and again and again. You know what that's like. It feels sometimes that we learn the same lesson over and over again. And even in the challenge, that sometimes the worry would pop up about, not about the quiet life, like the quieter life that I've been living and Ken has been living really has been wonderful. But every now and then, as life is a contact sport again, words of Mr. Banks, worry would pop out. And I began to realize that, I was taking my mental health for granted. And when I didn't have worry happening, then if I was talking to someone else who was worrying about the pandemic or whatever, I didn't have as much compassion because I'd forgotten what worry felt like. I don't know if that's happened to you, but life gave me a kick in the hiney and gave me something that I could worry about again. And I thought, hey, you know what? What is this blue cloud? And I went in and out of it. And then I don't know, but something happened last week where the worry slipped away. And I realized, we're taken care of. We're honestly taken care of. It was a feeling, but it was attached to that phrase, we're being taken care of. Don't worry. That's not serving you well. And I just, it just brought ease back in my life again with a fresh appreciation and compassion for my human nature and other people's human nature. Instead of feeling, okay, once we've tapped into our mental health and we go deeper and deeper and our worries get less and less, that won't happen anymore. And so I've never felt such respect for worry. It may sound funny to say that, but I have such a healthy respect for worry. It's like a red light. You stop at the red light. And I'd been used to a lot of green lights in the last little while. And so the red light was once again a nudge, mind waking me up, life's assignment waking me up. And so I feel all of us again, I know there's a multitude of trainings in the world today. And I've said this to you countless times. Listen to yourself, talk to your own wisdom, or just feel your own wisdom. Live in that feeling. I listened to Sid's tape yesterday and partly this morning, the Oneness from Hawaii. And he said in it, somebody had asked him that morning about training. And he said, you don't have to go to training. Just listen to your wisdom. You don't have to go to training. I know that there's a social aspect a lot of the time, to going to trainings and that there's learning that happens. But I'm going to say it again, whether you're sick of me saying it or not. Honestly, I love to listen. And again, it's not a deliberate thing. Like I don't plop myself in the chair or in the recliner and dial it up and say, okay, now I'm listening, wisdom, go ahead. It's this natural release of living and understanding where something new comes to you, maybe something new about worrying. I never thought in my lifetime I would ever say, I respect worry. Like, who does that? Who respects worry? But it was a new thing for me, and it gave me just a deeper level of understanding and compassion and respect. And so even as I'm saying this now, for me, it's like when I used to think and judge myself if I would worry, that you could worry and not judge yourself. That worry could act as an insight, is an insight. And that it brought deeper understanding. So the more we go into our world, the more answers there are, for sure. And the more enjoyment in listening to who we really are. I don't mean the form of who we are, but the essence of who we are.